Hi, this is BB Ukrainian Analytics. My name is Bogdan Butkevych. I'm a Ukrainian journalist and vlogger.
Hi, and I'm Olena Vostrova, a Ukrainian vlogger. And today, as usual, we'll give you the top news, analytics and insights about Russia-Ukraine war.
So subscribe to our channel if you want to know the truth and inside information about Ukraine and Russia-Ukraine war.
Let's start with the top achievements of the Ukrainian army.
So, this week Ukraine launched a decisive offensive against Crimea and the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation.
Preparatory work for this lasted throughout August. Air defense systems and radar stations on the western coast of Crimea and in the Kherson region were destroyed. And now the moment has come, the moment of triumph of Ukrainian weapons.
So, at the beginning of the week, Defense Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine announced a successful, really successful operation that returned gas drilling rigs in the southwestern part of the Black Sea under Ukrainian control.
They were occupied by the Russians back in 2014 during the occupation of Crimea, and they turned into important military objects a long time ago.
The Russians used them as locations for important radar and surveillance equipment, and also as a jumping-off points of helicopters and ships. There was always a supply of shells for attack helicopters, radars and locators.
A year ago, after the armed forces of Ukraine knocked out the Russians from Zmyny Island, they began to strike these platforms with missiles. Because of this, there were no permanent contingent on them.
However, the radars worked, and they gave the Russians very, very important information.
That is, full control of the entire southwestern water area of the Black Sea. That's why the Ukrainian aircraft could not fly close to Crimea to strike successfully.
Plus, it gave the Russians control over the water space. Therefore, conducting any amphibious operations turned into a deadly attraction.
And so, combat groups of special forces of the Defense Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine disabled and took away all Russian equipment from the platforms, including some of the latest radar stations and electronic warfare stations.
And in the process of combat raids, Ukrainian special forces even managed to shoot down a Russian Su-30 plane that was trying to sink the boats.
And there was one more very telling episode. During the mentioned battle with the plane, a Ukrainian soldier fell from one of the boats. He spent 14 hours in the water because the Russians, with their fire, did not allow to take him away.
Nevertheless, our defense intelligence was able to save the soldier whose call sign is Konon. And now he has become a hero, a kind of commander, a symbol for this kind of troops in Ukraine.
So, after capturing the platforms, the Russians stopped seeing the western water area of the sea in front of Crimea.
And the Ukrainian army immediately carried out a super successful operation against the Black Sea Fleet of Russian Federation.
On the night of September 13, the Ukrainian army struck a ship repair plant in Sevastopol, the only one of this kind in Crimea capable of repairing ships.
There was a large amphibious ship Minsk of the Ropucha class and the submarine of the Kilo class called Rostov-on-Don. They were in the dry dock undergoing repairs.
Suffice it to mention that Rostov-on-Don was the carrier of Kalibr missiles, which were used repeatedly to attack Ukraine using a sneaky tactic. The boat raised its nose above the water, quickly fired, and dived back to avoid being hit by Ukrainian anti-ship missiles.
And so it was precisely these ships that were hit.
To distract the Russian anti-aircraft defense, a blow was first struck by S-200 anti-aircraft missile modified for cruise missiles.
And under the cover of this, Ukrainian planes flew in from the sea. The Russians did not see them after capturing the platforms and destroying a whole network of radars and radar stations. And it was Ukrainian planes that most likely hit the ships with the Storm Shadow missiles.
As a result of accurate hits, the ship and submarine were completely destroyed.
The act of destroying the submarine with a cruise missile is unique. Plus, the destroyed Kalibr carrier. The Russians have no lost submarines from hostilities since World War II.
Equally important is the critical damage to the ship repair plant and dry dock. Now the Russians have nowhere to repair ships and boats of the Black Sea Fleet in Crimea. This is a huge shock to the entire fleet.
Before that, on the same day, in the area of the Kinburn Spit, Ukrainian forces also destroyed the Tunets landing craft. And this is the second landing craft in recent weeks.
But the events didn't end there. The next night, when the Russians tried to take the ships out on patrol, they were attacked by Ukrainian naval drones.
The armed force of Ukraine reported damage to at least 2 more patrol ships, Vasyl Bykov and Samum.
Corresponding videos of our defense intelligence prove that the strikes were successful.
The level of damage has not yet been reported, but here we mention the damage to the dry dock and the ship repair plant.
And that's not all. After all, on the night of September 14, the Ukrainian army conducted another brilliant operation.
This time, the strike was carried out in the area of the city of Yevpatoria on the western coast of Crimea.
Это пролетело.
Вот это прилетело, мама дорогая. Ой, блин.
Это нам прилетело.
Нам
Ох,
прилетело.
вон пошла что-то ракета, смотри.
Ракета, ага, пошла.
Ух ты, блин. Это сигнальная, да.
Это 10-я минута?
Ничего себе, так
Да,
это вообще-
10-я.
Это вообще прям рядом. Вот ты ж, это что-то там уже у пацанов.
Взорвалось уже там.
Да.
Не знаю, мальчик.
Что-то рядом у него.
Вон, смотри, что творится.
Where a large air defense base is located, including the latest air defense complex S-400 Triumph.
By the way, the Ukrainians has destroyed one recently at Cape Tarhankut with a modified Neptune missile at the end of August. We show this in this video.
And so, now a sample operation was carried out to destroy another such complex worth $1 plus $2 billion.
At first, an attack was carried out by kamikaze drones, which were guided by the radar radiation of the radars of the air defense system. Accordingly, the S-400 was left without eyes.
And then Neptune missiles hit the command post and launchers. According to the Rashists themselves, the unique complex was completely destroyed. The entire internet was flooded with the videos with evidences of this.
Это пролетело.
How does this differ from the Russian lies from May of this year, when the Russians were so eager to hit the Patriot complex in Kiev?
The S-400 is precisely the Russian replica of Patriot, unsuccessful as always.
Summing up, we can say that the armed forces are conducting an operation to systematically destroy the air defense system of Crimea.
Currently, a corridor through the western part of Crimea is already emerging. The Black Sea Fleet is becoming increasingly vulnerable.
Let's mention the destruction of ships and infrastructure. The Crimean Bridge and entire logistics system of the Russians on the southern front will be under attack again.
There is no doubt that the strikes will continue in the coming days and that they will be successful.
Победим?
Я хуй знаю, блядь.
The second case we want to analyze today is a story of one billionaire.
Russia is waging a genocidal war against us in which it prevails in its mobilization potential.
This is exactly what Russia has always done. Where it could not achieve results technically, it fought with people, pelting its opponents with cannon fodder.
Human life has never been a value in Russia. It is ready to pay any price for occupied land, any price. And we need to be aware of the mentality of these inhuman cannibals.
Of course, under such circumstances, we can only defeat this horde with a technical advantage. An advantage in high technologies and communication speed.
High speed and high quality communication that works without interruption is one of the key elements of Ukrainian victory. And this high speed communication for our armed force is provided by Starlink.
And of course, we are very grateful for this support. But there are some nuances.
The SpaceX CEO Elon Musk last year effectively sabotaged a Ukrainian drone attack on Russian naval vessels in Sevastopol in the early weeks of the conflict.
Walter Isaacson said in his new biography about the billionaire.
When Musk learned that Starlink satellites were being used to guide the drones, he spoke by phone with officials, including the Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov.
And this Antonov deceived and persuaded Musk that an attack on Sevastopol would trigger a nuclear response from Russia under the state's military doctrine.
Then Musk decided not to activate the Starlink satellites used to guide the drones.
Critics say Musk was played by Russia, and they are right. He became one of the most successful targets of Russian propaganda and fear-mongering.
Musk had not enabled Starlink in Crimea and kept that a secret.
We really could not figure out what was going on, although we received messages from our officials that Musk is a very specific kind of person who independently decides where to enable and where to disable Starlink.
And now we've got to know that Musk also decides not to enable it in parts of eastern Ukraine because he doesn't want it to be used for offensive purposes. Because in terms of service, Starlink was to be used for defensive purposes only.
Mr. Elon Musk, when we deoccupy our settlements with people whom the Russians torture, rape and kill in torture chambers, is not this defense? We don't have to free and protect our people and save their lives?
You know, Musk says, I created Starlink so people could chill and watch Netflix movies and play video games. I didn't mean to create something that might cause a nuclear war.
War in Ukraine is not a game. Our armed forces, consisting of the Ukrainians who are in their civilian life, are office managers, businessmen, scientists, are not playing games. They fight for our life and independence, and occupying our territory, they defend our people.
And it is quite a relevant question that was put to you by a Sky News journalist.
Has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives, sir? A Ukrainian official says that you have enabled Vladimir Putin as an aggressor. What do you say to that? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Do you appreciate that? What would you call Vladimir Putin? How has your ego and ignorance, sir, cost Ukrainian lives? A senior war official says it has.
You don't have to answer to the Sky News, Mr. Musk. You don't have to answer to the Ukrainians either. Answer to yourself, Mr. Musk.
The historian Anne Applebaum wrote in The Atlantic, "This is a cautionary tale about the arrogance of a billionaire who has come to play a mercurial role in the US foreign policy, but it's also a story about fear, seeded and promoted by the Russians, deliberately designed to shape broader Western perception of this war."
US Senator Elizabeth Warren called for an investigation into the SpaceX company. Congress has to investigate what happened and whether they have adequate tools to make sure that foreign policy is conducted by the government and not by one billionaire.
2 weeks ago, the US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin approved the agreement to purchase hundreds of new Starlink terminals and services.
This agreement will give the Pentagon control over the systems that provide the signal on the territory of Ukraine and allow it to be independent of the wishes of SpaceX owner Elon Musk.
And Musk decided to sell some of the equipment and services of Starlink and transfer full control over it to the US Army, so that he no longer personally controls the coverage of certain areas.
Taking into consideration that Elon Musk is financially dependent on dictatorial regimes of China and Russia and is a mouthpiece of their propaganda, it is a wise strategic decision.
The lives of the Ukrainians doesn't have to depend on the person who sympathizes with the Chinese and Russians who keep him on the hook of money and fear.
Thank you for watching and subscribe to our channel, and you will know everything about Ukraine and Russia-Ukrainian war.
Give us your like, subscribe for our channel if you want to know the truth about Ukraine and Ukrainians and about what's really going on here in Ukraine from the inside. Let us be your Ukrainian insiders.
Bye.
Papa.